It's so good to see everybody today. We're excited to feature a webinar titled The Second Yes, How Eastern Shore Community College partnered with myFootpath to reengage stopouts and grow total enrollment by 5%, which is a pretty significant number. Before we get into intros, I'm just going to toss it over to Dr. Shaeffer. Tell us about that title, The Second Yes.
Thanks, Luke. The second yes is follows the first yes, which was your Eastern Shore. And that, matter of fact, I have my yes pen on today. And that really was we built the yes culture for the college on things like accountability, and transparency, and we really needed to change the culture. And so yes emerged, and the other piece of that is that we wanted to send a message to the community that this is your Eastern Shore Community College. And frighteningly, it actually worked. People certainly across the whole Eastern Shore have bought into it and will ask me occasionally, so what's new with yes, or whatever the case may be. So we had the culture change, and then now the second yes was we've got to we've got to increase enrollment.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Jim. I'm going to get into introductions now. I'm Luke Schultheis. I'm a senior advisor and longtime enrollment manager working with myFootpath. Jim, give us a little background on yourself and then why you are also presently now an advisor.
I appreciate that again. I've spent probably 40 plus years in higher education. I've been a dean at three or four different four-year institutions, and really most of my career has been at research four-year institutions. And then about 7 years ago, I got this wonderful opportunity to be president of Eastern Shore Community College, and I retired almost a year ago. But I got to tell you, if you're going to end your career, for me, who believes in the power of education, being in a community college was absolutely perfect, and being at Eastern Shore has been a dream come true.
That's awesome. Jim, what got you into to serving as an advisor with the group here?
The really what started this all was a conversation I had with a guy named Michael Huffman out of VCU now, and he was working with myFootpath, and he said you need to talk to them and talk to them about their product. And so I had conversations with JT and his crew, and it dovetailed perfectly with something I believe strongly in, and that is that we have people who have stopped out for whatever reason, and they've stopped out anywhere from just a month to several years, and that they're low-hanging fruit. We need to reach back to those people and help them complete. And so that started my experience with myFootpath, and then in retirement, I had an opportunity that JT provided for me to come on board, and it was real simple. And that is, I believe, and really, this isn't a paid commercial, folks. I so believe in the product and the idea of going after the stop outs that I said, absolutely, I want to share this good news with others, and so here I am.
That's great. And I know everyone's glad to have you aboard as a former president. You bring great insights into helping refine the wonderful services. JT, you've been in the business for a long time. Share with the groups of your history.
Yeah, for sure. So it's hard to believe, but this is year 26 for me in the business. And really, with myFootpath as its leader, um, we focus on stop outs, we focus on bringing them back. We think it's such an underserved market and just opportunity for schools to really tap into what they're sort of kind of sitting on, so to speak. And really, this past few years has been just an emphasis on student success and really driving not only to get people to re-enroll, but to get them to re-enroll and graduate. And so it's been kind of a proud moment for me to see some of the graduation rates we've achieved. Really significant and really powerful. So glad to be here and great to share the virtual stage here with you two gentlemen.
Awesome. We're going to get into a little bit of the context of the overall enrollment situation and then begin discussing how this service impacted Eastern Shore Community College. If we take a look at this graph here, it's pretty clear we've got a peak there. If we look down at 2025 of high school graduates, about 3.8 million. And we've been hearing about this demographic cliff for years and years. Through my travels, I haven't seen a significant number of peers really get ready for this, figure out ways to address it, identify new markets and how they would serve them. But this clearly indicates that this population is going to be going through some significant declines over time. And with roughly, the same number of schools we had a few years ago, the competition is just getting increasingly more challenging to enroll traditional high school students. On this next slide, it indicates the way this decline is happening geographically. And you could see with those dark red colors, very, very pronounced in parts of the Midwest and the Northeast. The declines are significant, 11 to 32%, nearly a third of the high school graduates going into decline. The other two shades of the pink are also declines, and there are a few areas in the country where we see some increased growth from the traditional high school market. I know for sure, and speaking with peers, that a lot of institutions who reside in the deep red colors have set up shop in the gray colors. So that doesn't make working in the gray states much easier. You're essentially drawn into the same sort of situation there. Interestingly, on this next slide, what we see is the amount of stop outs. And in just thinking back for a second at those gray states, California and Texas were in states where high school graduates were increasing in number. And again, we've got representatives from other institutions across the country setting up shop here. We also see here there are more stop outs in those regions than in other areas. So this chart really indicates a number that's been growing. National Student Clearinghouse shared this about a year ago, and it jumped a couple million students. So we've got 43 million stop outs. These are folk who had been admitted into an institution of higher education, started and never completed their degree. And then on top of that, we've got 10 million who were admitted and just didn't attend. So there's a very, very significant number of folk out there who have started that journey into higher education and for whatever reason weren't able to complete it. And it represents certainly challenges in society. We know that with a college degree come all sorts of benefits. So we've got, if we look right there, 53 million people who started along a journey to be able to enjoy those benefits and were derailed for whatever issue. When we look at the Eastern Shore on our next slide here, it's an area over in rural Virginia, just on the ocean. We're going to turn it over to Jim here to talk a little bit about his school, what it's like, what the history had been like over the last 10 years or so when you had joined them, and how you sort of came to some decisions on what you wanted to do to increase enrollment, not just for the sake of increasing enrollment, but also for doing it for the public good. Jim?
Right, right. And I echo what JT said. We've moved from engaging students to come to college to helping them graduate. And I think that that's a significant and important move on most institutions' part. Yeah, I started as president almost 7 years ago. And to understand Eastern Shore Community College, it's important to understand the Eastern Shore. The Eastern Shore is surrounded by water. And we have the Chesapeake Bay on one side, and on the other side, we have this thing called the Atlantic Ocean. And we are separated from Virginia down into what we call Virginia Beach by a 17-mile tunnel and bridge. And you can imagine in the good old days, only way to get over there was by boat. And I think one of the unique challenges, maybe not unique, but is understanding the fact that half of the people on the shore are either in poverty or working poor. And so our mission is really quite clear, and that is how do we reach these individuals? When I came to the college, they were experiencing drops, serious drops in enrollment. Particularly our FTE had gone down to 300 and some. And that also raised financial issues. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure I was told about all the financial issues during the interview process, but I learned very quickly. And those were, having to borrow $500,000 at the end of the year or 300 that went on for about 3 years. And so it really was how do we get enrollments up? How do we level off our financial situation? And we also celebrated our 50th anniversary. And I'm thinking, I don't want that to be the last one. How do we get ready for the next 50 years? Yeah, the challenges were real clear. And I can talk more about that, Luke, as we move along. And increasing by 5%, certainly, yeah, we needed to do that.
Thanks, Jim. In just reflecting a little more on the situation you walked into, thinking about the employees at the institution, would you say it was, you had a significant size, highly skilled staff, or it was easy to recruit new folk and just kind of do things at scale that you wanted to, or what was the context there?
I'd love to say we had so many people I didn't know what to do with them. Nothing could be further from the truth. As part of what we went through is this reboot, which was a 3-year period. As part of that, 14 people were rifted. So we've got employees about 65, and then we lost 15 of them, 14 of them. And that's a huge percentage. And so with that, two things happened. One is everybody was looking over their shoulder. Who's going to go next? And matter of fact, to the point of people writing to the folks on our advisory committee explaining why I was so special and somebody else wasn't. So beautiful culture to walk into, to say the least. And then the second part of that had to do with we had to do more with less, period. And that was certainly one of my, one of the things that I was clear about when I first got there. I know it's going to be tough, but that's the nature of the beast, folks. So let's buckle under and make it happen.
Awesome. Well, we move on to the beginning of the relationship on the next slide with myFootpath. And JT, could you begin by explaining the introduction to the institution through the immersion day and maybe ask Jim for some reflections on his experiences as you go through this slide?
Yeah, sure. And so, as you can imagine, right? So, Jim and I have a call and we're talking about, what we do. And it's like, okay, paint me a picture of, what it is. And, um, but, we really find that you really need to visit a place to really get a sense of, we call it what are the pieces you have on the board, and what do you have to work with to kind of come at the re-enrollment process, the re-enrollment sort of challenge. And so the first step in any relationship with us is what we call an immersion day. And so that's when a few of us from the team, you can see the back profile of my head there, nice balding picture. But the walking in to the beautiful campus, beautiful place, but to really get a sense of, okay, well, what do you do today with stop outs, and how does that process work? Where are people getting stuck? Where's really the friction that the student might face? How do you make it easier? But how do you make it easier with the pieces you have on the board, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of the critical thing. If you could hire, 10 people to do it, you wouldn't need us, but you can't. So that's kind of the premise and sort of the rationale behind the immersion day. And then what we do on that day is we meet with the different departments. So it's a little bit different by institution, but you can imagine the key components are, admissions. How are they coming into the institution? How are they getting through the institution? What sort of courses are available? What pathways may be there? What pathways are coming? What are changing? How are they, working with different resources, different, maybe advising staff, maybe just institutional staff on getting through to graduation. So it's a great day for us. We learn a ton. It's a very tiring day because your brain is full of so many details of what's going on. And on our day there, maybe Jim, you can speak to it, but I do remember that that day was like, wear your favorite jersey day, and you welcome the Chicagoan with your Cubs jersey. So I was appreciative of that. But maybe you could just speak to a little bit about the experience of the day.
Yeah, first of all, I thought it was a great day, and lots of things played into that. Number one, we talked the other day, JT, we must have had 15 to 30 people. And so we're talking about almost half of the staff were involved. And so, the thing that happens is that provides buy-in all the way across. And you do it, from day one. And so that really was important. The second piece of that is that we were forced to talk about things that we didn't really talk about before. And they're very important subjects. And one of them is what barriers are we putting up for people so they can seem to come back? Why is it so hard to do that? How can we make it easier? And so, those sorts of discussions, having nearly everyone there, just really, people bought in, absolutely. And it's because we were all there together trying to implement something that we thought would make a difference to the college.
So JT, part of the immersion day includes discussing data definitions and agreeing on where information's held, and then getting it over to myFootpath. Could you speak to the analytics phase?
Yeah, sure. So that's sort of that we begin that work on immersion day, and then it continues. Typically, it's about 30 days, sort of following. But what we do on immersion day is we essentially define the field. So, every institution has, institutional data. You're looking at, in the case of Eastern Shore, it was applicant history for the last 25 years. But part of what we needed to do is understand, well, okay, is that applicant, at one time, do they have a degree now? So we bump it up against the clearinghouse to see sort of where they are in their educational journey. That tells us a couple things. Either they're a bachelor's target, In some cases for us, they may be a master's target, but you could figure out which programs they may be eligible to come back to at Eastern Shore, right? So there it was really focused on the associates and then some of the trade pieces. But then are they welcome back? So, if you didn't pay your bill, if you were dismissed academically, if you had a behavior issue, all of those things, you don't really want to send a message out to an individual, hey, come on back. And then when they get to the door, you say, just kidding. So that process, we're very good at it. And we've really made it easy for institutions. So what you need to start is really first name, last name, date of birth. That's it. And that can get you going to really get a sense of, okay, what do we have in terms of a prospect pool? We go back 25 years. In their case, they had 22. That's just kind of where the system cutover fell. We looked at over 10,000 records. And then after all of the different filters to figure out, are they eligible to return, we identified, 4,500 folks. And to put that in perspective, I think enrollment at the time was about 800 students. So this is a massive list that all of a sudden, I remember the meeting with Jim, just kind of showing the results. And it was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to tackle this? Right. So that process will yield it. And what many institutions don't realize is really how large that list can be.
Yeah, JT, I again, we talked the other day, and I just was blown away. That we can't possibly have that many at your Eastern Shore Community College. Our FTE at the time was probably 360, 380. And it was mind blowing. But it was also confirming that we're going down the right road. One of the things you asked about, if you had the people, you could go ahead and do it. The other piece is that you could have the people, but they don't have the expertise that you all bring to the table. So we'd have to train up and all of these things. And I'm more of a president that believed if we can find a way to outsource this to the experts, let's make sure we do that. And that's what this experience was.
Yeah, and I would say just to that kind of speaks to the other 2 points really on the barrier removal and the tactical outreach. So those are common areas with any institution. So step one is really looking at, well, okay, what are your hold codes? I think the record we've run across now is 350 different hold codes to prevent the student from coming back for some reason or another. Eastern Shore only had 150, right? So, or I guess 94 there. So, you were ahead, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of different reasons. And what you've got to do with it is you got to figure out, well, okay, what's the route, right? So, of those 94, some can't come back at all, right? If you had a behavior issue and you had an assault charge, you may not be coming back to campus. But for most folks, it was just figuring out, well, what do you got to do, right? So, okay, you owe some money. Okay, pay your bill, right? Or get on a payment plan. You were academically dismissed. Okay, well, what's it take to come back? So we put all those into the different routes so that we could then do the outreach. So, and that's just part of the expertise that we try to really bring to the table. So, Luke, I know I cut you off there, but
No,
that was just to dovetail on what Jim was speaking to.
That's great. You mentioned earlier, JT, was wear your favorite team jersey day. I've heard your team in Chicago talking about wearing their favorite jerseys, which are those of the institutions for whom they're dedicated. Could you speak a little bit more about how your staff are dedicated to specific institutions and working through those active programs to find the right pathways for folk?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple things. So essentially, think of it as kind of a white labeled partnership, right? So meaning the team has an Eastern Shore email, right? And they're, JT Allen at the Eastern Shore email. And that outreach kind of goes through that, channel, right? And then in addition, as we do different, marketing messages, email is sort of the workhorse for us, different digital ways to reach people, but email is primary. It's going to look and feel like an email that you might get from Eastern Shore. So we want to feel like it's something the institution has seen, they've approved it. It feels very much like it's coming from the institution as an extension of your team. And so then what you can imagine is that outreach is then a bit more effective because it sort of goes with and kind of fits the mindset of, oh, this is what I would expect from Eastern Shore, right?
So we've painted the picture of the situation Eastern Shore was experiencing, how myFootpath was engaged and began the work. On this next slide, we're going to be able to look at the impact. What happened? What were the results of the initial work here? So, JT, can you walk us through a few of these bullets, and then we'll go back and forth with Jim on some of the issues that he was facing as well.
Sure. So, biggest thing here to sort of take away is it works. And it is amazing to me how many folks just, as we did the outreach, we do emails, we do phone calls, we do text messages, people respond. And, in many cases, they hadn't heard much from Eastern Shore because, Eastern Shore is not set up to make outbound, outreach, right? They're not making phone calls, from a phone bank there, right? So just the talking to folks really was step one, and getting them then through the process, because you can imagine as they come back, they've got all kinds of questions, right? And for an adult student, that's usually the hardest thing is they don't know where to start. So our whole focus is, all right, let's get to what's your next step. But what came back, almost 5% of total enrollment. So I took the number down here. So at the time, it was approximately 50 students came back in that first year that we routed back to Eastern Shore. And then we think that will grow over time because we've seen it kind of increase each year to almost 150, which would be 15% of kind of the total enrollment. So pretty powerful.
That's great. Jim, from your perspective, running the entire enterprise, how was the institution able to handle the kind of significant return of students? Was it a big challenge? Was it sort of easy to facilitate?
Well, it was, we had space. We had space in the classes that students needed. And that was a luxury in itself. Because while we had a very high faculty to student ratio, low ratio, we had plenty of room for the students that we could bring back to the college. And if there was extra challenges, and it really wasn't, but it was providing student advising and making sure that we sat down with the student and advised them on the shortest path between where they were and where they wanted to go.
Got it. Moving into this next slide, this one features what's called the +2 program. And as you can see here, a traditional transfer process into a 4-year degree from a 2-year institution can often be very cumbersome. With this +2 program, it's been eased, if you will, road mapped out. JT, can you outline how the program works?
Yeah, sure. So part of what we did when we set it up is we said, okay, as students graduate with their associate's degree, what's the next step? And so we built into our program, we have different universities that we partner with that are four-year institutions. And so we set it up where we would introduce those universities to the folks from Eastern Shore as they graduated or right as they were approaching graduation. So when they're starting to think about, well, I'm graduating in the spring, where am I going to go in the fall type of thing. And so, those universities are, nonprofit, they're online focused. So that was really, and they have lots of different degrees and sort of flexible adult focused options. So that's what really sort of made the difference. But I mean, it says 7% there. We're almost at 15% now, but we've had 102 folks actually raise their hand through the process and say, I want more information, right? The program's set up, it doesn't mean you have to go, right? But what it's set up is it's an easy process for that Eastern Shore student to say, hey, yep, I would like more information about this program. And then as part of myFootpath, we have an option to place them into the four-year degree.
That's super, especially when thinking about places like Eastern Shore, where there may be families who have lived there for generations. It's not easy to uproot. Maybe students are working and can't leave town to go to a four-year institution elsewhere, and have an opportunity to remain in the region and to be able to advance their course of study. Jim, you had mentioned it was three, I believe, reasons. Why, what benefit is it to these students once they complete the degree? What are they able to do? What are they looking for?
Yes, I'll answer that question, Luke. But before I answer that one, I also want to say one of the goals of the college is to keep people on the shore. We have population has steadily been going down, and we have a bit of a brain drain. So we really are trying to prepare them for things that are available on the shore. And so what's in it for the folks to eventually complete a 2-year or 4-year degree? There's 4 places you can launch a rocket in the United States. One of them is Wallops Island, which is about 30 minutes to the north of where I'm sitting. And Wallops Island is the home to NASA, Virginia Space, and several other contractors. I actually as they're preparing to launch an Armatist, I actually saw a launch of that from the Wallops Island that was headed up to bring things to our space lab. And so we really are, that's where we're having growth in terms of job opportunities. And, it's not just you don't have to be a rocket scientist, because they're not looking for rocket scientists. They're looking for people who are technicians. They're looking for people who can do security and those sorts of things. And so basically, by finishing that degree, there is a super highway from ESCC to Wallops Island, and it's a good paying job, absolutely, and it keeps them on the shore. So for me, that's the really big, important thing that we can offer.
It's really fascinating because, again, thinking about especially rural areas, we don't tend to see a lot of migration in jobs, and to be able to grow the talent that's already there, to complete a degree at your institution and then continue to complete at another, to be able to stimulate the workforce and bring up the economy, essentially,
Right.
is what it's doing, and you've played a real pivotal role in that.
Well, and if you talk to the employers, I was just thinking about Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab came to the shore about 3-4 years ago. It's a company that came out of Australia and has been launching regularly now. And what they'll tell you, and NASA will tell you, and Virginia Space will tell you that we want to hire people who are from the Eastern Shore. They will bring in engineers from other places, and they'll be here for a year or two, and then they're gone. And so anything we can do to be able to fill that funnel, um, I mean, they are our friends, and we are their friends for a very good reason.
That's fantastic.
Luke, I saw a question in the chat just
Go ahead,
asking
go ahead,
about
JT.
college partners, and so what those are, and so the college partners that are referenced here for the +2 program are partners of myFootpath. So myFootpath has a relationship with them where we work very closely with them to help them, bring students to their online programs. And then the costs are funded by those college partners, right? So that we typically have some sort of tuition share arrangement with the different partners that are in that program. And then they would pay for the +2 towards the bachelor's program. They pay a portion of the fees back to us.
So it sounds what's really nice about that also is the academic pathways have been already identified. So it makes it much easier on the front end and the receiving end to develop that strong pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to put it in perspective, right? So I mean, most community colleges, right, they're regional in nature, right? And so, Eastern Shore being in Virginia, if you go onto the Eastern Shore website, there's all kinds of, links and schools that work within Virginia, right? And you can always do that. And so anytime we don't have any 4-year partners in Virginia, they're in other states, but all the programs are online, right? And so what we would have is oftentimes we'd send a list of the Virginia institutions, to the student, right? And they'd say, "Oh yeah, I want to go to Old Dominion. I want to go to," and it was too hard. so they come back and say, "Well, do you have a program that actually is articulated, and I know my transfer credits, and I can start in 3 weeks? Oh, perfect." So it became a very, it kind of solved the regional challenge of, hey, we need to feed the area. Of course, you can always feed the area. But if you need a program and you need something that really fits those adult learners, if it's not there, that's really where our college partners step in. So it seems to fit pretty well with that kind of regional perspective.
Makes a lot of sense. Jim, we have several other presidents who had registered to view this webinar today. Could you take the opportunity to sort of speak directly to them and what your advice would be to them if they're considering such an engagement?
Sure. One of the things I was thinking when I think JT was talking about, maybe it was you, Luke, about the cliff and the challenges with the cliff. And one of the things that we as presidents of community colleges need to recognize is that our competition with the 4-year institutions is just going to go way up. They are going to go after our students and get them into their college, and so we've got to provide a way for to continue to provide the best path for our students, and the competition will be something like we've never seen before. So I have long been a believer that stop outs were basically the low-hanging fruit in terms of students to be able to recruit and to get them enrolled. Um, Matter of fact, as you guys know, we started a program when I was at JMU called Return to Madison, where what we did is took a look at stop outs over the last 3 years and went after them, and had good success. And so when I started talking to JT, I said, "This is it. This is exactly, the sort of program we need, because I know it works." And so if I had a message to my colleagues, presidents, it would be the research is clear that stop outs are low-hanging fruit, and I'm talking about research, and to not take advantage of trying to enroll these students, not taking advantage of utilizing somebody else's expertise, I think is just one of the big opportunities missed. Now, I realize you're going to go, oh, yeah, now he's what am I, a senior advisor? One of the things that's true, I'm certainly senior. How advisory I am, I don't know. But it really has nothing to do with that. The only reason that I came on board when JT asked me is that I believe in this. And I not only do I believe in it, I know it works. And so if you haven't had the conversation with JT and his group, you need to have it, and then make a decision after that. But again, not to have it as, you're making a decision and you're leaving the stop outs, low-hanging fruit just on the table.
Thanks, Jim. We've had an opportunity to hear from President James Shaeffer. Jim has been president of Eastern Shore Community College for a number of years, engaged myFootpath to increase enrollments, stimulated graduation, added to the workforce. We provided context on the institution and how the process developed. JT, in closing, would you share, are there opportunities still for institutions that are looking for moving into the fall? What's the pathway look for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, right now we're having lots of discussions, as you can imagine, about, okay, well, what do we do for fall? And there's still time, but the window's closing, right? So you want to get moving. But what we find is it typically takes us about 45 days to really get going, to get the outreach and the engine sort of running for each client. So yeah, there's still time to do it, but certainly sooner is better to kind of impact fall 26. And I would just say, if it is of interest, if it's something you're thinking about, I'd encourage you to have a conversation. Every school we meet with, we prepare pretty detailed financial models to give you a sense of, this is what you can achieve at scale. And so if anything, it just sets a benchmark, to that you can kind of work towards and against with an internal team, right? So we'd certainly love to do it, love to help, but we also want to kind of inform the industry and kind of shout from the mountaintops. This is the potential of this category, and would love to chat if it makes sense.
Fantastic. You can see on our screen there JT's contact information and a QR code to scan into that. A few of the bullets just on how easy it is to develop a conversation. There are research papers that are on the myfootpath.com website. There are also a number of other interviews and webinars speaking to different topics. So regardless of the type of institution you have, I'm sure you'll find a context that's relative. And JT, he travels the conference circuit and will be at UPSIA shortly and at ACRO following that, and many others. Please feel free to reach out to any of us to just have a conversation, to learn more about re-enrolling adults. And we want to thank you for tuning in to our webinar today. And please keep in touch with us at myFootpath.